The tremors began without warning. Ziktor steadied himself against the research vessel's bulkhead as the ground beneath SX-279's research camp shuddered violently. His iridescent feathers bristled with alarm as equipment crashed around the command center. Tectonic activity at unprecedented levels, reported Nevra, the team's geologist. Her talons clicked rapidly across the monitoring station. This isn't a standard quake. Something's happening beneath the western ridge. Ziktor gazed through the viewport at the barren landscape. SX-279 had been classified as a dead world, atmospheric composition suitable for life, but devoid of anything more complex than microbial colonies. Their expedition had been meant to study these simple organisms, not dodge planet-wide earthquakes. Evacuation protocols? Asked Kiravesh, his security officer. Ziktor hesitated. 15 years of academic ridicule had followed him across the galaxy, the archaeologist obsessed with chasing myths. This expedition was his last chance at redemption. No, he decided. We investigate first. 4 hours later, their hover skiff descended into a chasm that hadn't existed that morning. The massive tear in the planet's surface extended for kilometers, revealing layer upon layer of geological history. Ziktor's specialized helmet illuminated the darkness as they dropped deeper. These formations aren't natural, observed Nevra, gesturing to perfectly straight lines visible in the rock face. They're too precise. At 800 meters below the surface, their lights reflected off something impossible, a metallic surface untouched by corrosion. The team exchanged glances of disbelief as they approached the massive structure now exposed by the quake. It appears to be an entrance, whispered Kiravesh, running his talons across symbols etched into the metal. And these markings, they're not random patterns. Ziktor felt his heart racing. They're language glyphs, ancient but definitely artificial. It took 3 days to breach the entrance safely. When the massive doors finally slid open, responding to techniques that shouldn't have worked on truly ancient technology, the team stood speechless at the threshold. Their lights revealed a vast chamber untouched by time, preserved in a stasis field that their instruments couldn't fully analyze. Impossible, breathed Nevra. By all calculations, this has been here for millions of years. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal of black material that absorbed their lights rather than reflecting them. Atop it rested a crystalline structure the size of Ziktor's fist, pulsing with a faint blue luminescence. Some kind of data storage, he hypothesized, carefully approaching. Years of archaeological training warred with his excitement as he documented everything before proceeding. When his instruments confirmed it was safe, Ziktor carefully lifted the crystal from its resting place. The moment his talons touched its surface, the light within intensified, and the air before them shimmered. A figure materialized. Bipedal, with smooth skin lacking any feathers or scales, it stood upright with a confidence that seemed almost familiar despite its alien appearance. The proportions were strange yet somehow balanced. 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head with forward-facing eyes that seemed to look directly at them across millions of years. "This is Admiral Elena Chen of the Terran Alliance," spoke the figure in a language that should have been incomprehensible yet somehow translated directly into their minds. "If you're watching this, then something of humanity has survived after all." Ziktor's legs nearly buckled beneath him. The myths were real. Humans had existed. Everything he had staked his career on, everything he had been ridiculed for, stood vindicated before him as the holographic human continued to speak. "This facility contains the consolidated knowledge of our species, our history, our achievements, our failures, and our final decisions. We leave this record as both warning and gift to whatever intelligence might follow us among the stars." Ziktor looked at his stunned colleagues, their scientific worldview crumbling around them. "Contact the Galactic Conquests," he whispered. "Everything we thought we knew is about to change." Preposterous, absolutely preposterous. Professor Jethkel's voice boomed through the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Conquests Science Academy. The elder Volari's scaled skin flushed deep purple with indignation as he jabbed a clawed finger toward the holographic projections of Ziktor's discoveries. We are expected to believe that some convenient earthquake revealed the mythical humans precisely when archaeologist Ziktor, whose obsession with this fiction is well documented, happened to be present. 2 weeks had passed since the discovery on SX-279, and the academic community remained fiercely divided. Hundreds of the galaxy's most prestigious scientists filled the hall, their diversity of forms reflecting the Concordet's vast membership of intelligent species. Ziktor stood calmly at the presentation podium, his feathers immaculately groomed for this career-defining moment. The evidence speaks for itself, Professor. The crystal data core contains millions of files with biological, historical, and technological information about a species that called themselves humans. Their genetic markers follow predictable evolutionary patterns for a carbon-based life form. The language translation matrices embedded in the core allow direct communication with their records. Fabrications, countered Jethkal. Elaborate fabrications by someone with too much technological skill and too little academic integrity. The assembly erupted into conflicting opinions, some supporting the traditional view that humans were merely allegorical figures from ancient folklore, others intrigued by the compelling evidence. Amid the chaos, a striking figure entered the hall. The crowd parted instinctively as Dr. Myril Vex approached the central floor. Her reputation preceded her, the most brilliant cynoanthropologist of her generation, known for solving historical mysteries that had baffled scholars for centuries. "The Academy has asked me to assess these claims," she announced, her voice cutting through the noise without needing amplification. The silver feathers around her eyes, a mark of her prestigious lineage among Avarians, caught the light as she surveyed the assembly. "I have reviewed the initial data transmitted from SX-279, and I find sufficient cause for a full investigation," she continued. "I will leave an expanded research team to the planet immediately. If this is indeed a hoax, I will uncover it. If not..." She let the implication hang in the air. Myril Vex had built her reputation on disproving sensational claims about ancient civilizations. If she validated Ziktor's findings, not even Jethkal could dismiss them. 3 days later, Myril Vex's personal research vessel touched down on SX-279's surface. She disembarked with clinical detachment, her team of specialists following with equipment designed specifically to detect archaeological fraud. Ziktor met her at the research camp's entrance. "Dr. Myril Vex, it's an honor to..." "Save the pleasantries," she interrupted. "Show me everything, starting with your original survey data from before the earthquake." For hours, she scrutinized every detail of the discovery, searching for inconsistencies. Her analytical mind catalogued each piece of evidence, looking for the pattern that would unravel what she was certain was an elaborate deception. When they finally descended into the chasm to the exposed facility, Myril Vex insisted on scanning every centimeter of the entrance before proceeding inside. "These alloys," she murmured, examining her readings. "They contain element combinations I've never encountered. The manufacturing process doesn't match any known technological lineage." Inside the chamber, she stood before the holographic projection of Admiral Chen, her expression unreadable as the human figure repeated its programmed message. "The dating is conclusive," reported her assistant. "The stasis field technology preserving this chamber has been active for approximately 2.3 million standard years." Myril Vex's professional composure finally cracked. "That's impossible. No power source cold." A signal from her scanner interrupted her. It had been running deep planetary scans since their arrival, mapping the geological composition of SX-279. "Dr. Myril Vex," her assistant said, voice trembling, "you need to see these results immediately." She examined the data and froze. The scanner had identified remnants of artificial structures buried throughout the planet's crust. More significantly, it had detected trace isotopes that matched only one theoretical planetary profile in all their records. "This isn't SX-279," she whispered, her academic certainty crumbling around her. According to these readings, this planet is Earth. Word spread quickly. Within 3 weeks, the transformed landscape of Earth became dotted with research outposts from across the Concordat. Species that had rarely cooperated now worked side by side, united by the mystery of their mythical predecessors. Miralvex stood at the edge of the vast excavation site, watching hovering platforms transport artifacts to the newly established preservation facilities. The revelation that SX-279 was actually Earth had transformed her from skeptic to the Discovery's most passionate defender. "The northern sector has been secured," reported Zictor, approaching with his datapad. "We've established perimeter sensors around the mountain complex as you requested." Miralvex nodded, her gaze fixed on the distance. Any unauthorized entry attempts? 3 in the past day, all from Drelkar vessels. Zictor's feathers ruffled with concern. They're growing bolder. The Drelkar, secretive, technology-hoarding isolationists, had arrived just days after the Concordat's announcement. Their sudden interest in archaeological exploration struck everyone as suspicious. "Double the security protocols," Miralvex ordered. "What they want is inside that mountain, and I intend to find it first." The mountain facility had been discovered through ground-penetrating scans, a massive complex buried deep within what humans had apparently called the Rocky Mountains. Initial exploration suggested it had been a military installation, sealed against time itself by technologies that defied understanding. The following morning, Miralvex led the first authorized expedition into the mountain's depths. Their hover sleds moved silently through cavernous tunnels carved with precision no modern mining equipment could match. "These weren't just carved," observed the team's engineering specialist, a Nularian named X, whose translucent exoskeleton pulsed with bioluminescent excitement. "They were molecularly fused. The rock wasn't removed, it was rearranged." They reached a massive door bearing symbols that matched those from the first discovery. Miralvex applied the decryption protocols they'd developed, and with a hiss of preserved atmosphere, the entrance slid open. Lights automatically activated as they entered, responding to their presence after eons of darkness. The chamber beyond staggered even the most seasoned researchers. Row upon row of preserved technology filled the space, devices whose purposes they could only guess at. "By the cosmic void," whispered X, approaching what appeared to be a weapon smaller than their hand. "The energy readings from this device alone exceed the output capabilities of our largest generators." Miralvex moved deeper into the facility, drawn to a circular platform in the center of the chamber. Around it stood 7 upright capsules, each large enough to contain a being approximately human-sized. "Some kind of medical technology," suggested Zictor. "Not exactly," Miralvex replied, studying the symbols on a nearby console. "According to these glyphs, this is a consciousness transfer station. These humans had somehow developed the capacity to separate and preserve mental patterns independent of biological substrates." Curiosity overcoming caution, she placed her hand on the activation panel. The console illuminated instantly, and one of the capsules hummed to life. Before anyone could react, a field of energy enveloped Miralvex, holding her immobile for 3 terrifying seconds. When it released her, she collapsed to her knees, her feathers trembling uncontrollably. "Miralvex." Zictor rushed to her side. "What happened? Are you injured?" She looked up at him, her eyes wide with an emotion he couldn't identify. "I felt them. For just a moment, I experienced an echo of whoever last used this device." Her voice cracked. Such hope, such terrible grief. They knew they were facing the end, yet there was this overwhelming sense of determination. She rose unsteadily. They were saying goodbye to each other, preserving what they could before implementing something called the protocol. But they weren't just preserving memories, Zictor. They were preserving purpose. A sudden alarm blared from their communication devices. The security perimeter had been breached. The Drelkar had made their move. "We need to secure this technology immediately," Miralvex ordered, her scientific detachment returning. Whatever happened to humanity, the Drellcar seem to know more about it than they're revealing, and they're determined to ensure we don't discover the truth. Alarms blared through the mountain facility as Miralvex and Ziktor rushed to secure their most critical discoveries. 3 Drellcar ships had breached the perimeter, deploying ground forces with military precision. "We need to evacuate the research team," Ziktor urged, gathering data cores containing their findings. Miralvex shook her head, her attention fixed on a sealed door they'd discovered at the rear of the consciousness transfer chamber. "There's something more here, something important enough for the Drellcar to risk open conflict with the Concordat." The door bore different markings from others in the facility, more complex with additional security protocols. While Ziktor coordinated the evacuation, Miralvex worked furiously to decipher the locking mechanism. "Got it," she whispered as the symbols aligned and the massive door began to slide open. The chamber beyond was smaller than expected, containing only a single pedestal. Floating above it was a translucent cube that shimmered with internal light, suspended in a containment field that had preserved it for millennia. "What is it?" asked Ziktor, joining her. Before she could answer, the cube pulsed, and a voice filled the room. Neither male nor female, but something in between. "Quantum signature detected. Initiating limited restoration protocols." The cube expanded, projecting a 3-dimensional interface around them. Lines of data in human script flowed through the air, restructuring themselves into patterns before their eyes. "I am the Advanced Records and Information System," the voice announced. "My primary function is preservation and dissemination of human knowledge following implementation of the Diaspora Protocol." Miralvex stared in wonder. A conscious artificial intelligence. Preserved all this time. "Not fully conscious," the system corrected. "I am operating at 14% capacity due to energy conservation measures. Full restoration requires authorized command protocols." "Can you tell us what happened to the humans?" Ziktor asked cautiously. The interface shifted, displaying a timeline of events. Human civilization reached its apex approximately 2.4 million years ago by your chronological measure. The species faced multiple convergent crises: ecological collapse, resource depletion, and significant philosophical divisions regarding evolutionary direction. Images appeared showing human cities, vast and gleaming, followed by scenes of conflict and devastation. The Great Division began as a theoretical debate. The system continued. Should humanity remain as it was? Should it merge with its created intelligences? Should it adapt biologically to survive in diverse environments throughout the galaxy? The debate became polarized, then militarized. "They destroyed themselves?" Miralvex asked. "Negative. Humanity chose transformation over extinction. The Diaspora Protocol was not an evacuation, it was an evolution. Humans engineered genetic adaptation templates, consciousness preservation matrices, and seeding technologies. They dispersed these throughout the galaxy, implementing a strategic speciation initiative. The implications struck Miralvex like a physical blow. "Are you saying humans deliberately evolved into new species?" Before the system could answer, the facility shuddered from an impact above. Dust fell from the ceiling as emergency lights activated. "Drellcar forces have breached the main entrance," reported a security officer through their communicators. "They're using energy weapons we can't counter." The intelligence system flickered. Hostile presence detected. Implementing emergency protocols. The cube contracted suddenly, ejecting a small data crystal that shot directly toward Miralvex, attaching itself to her personal computing device. "Critical data packet transferred," the system announced as its projection began to fade. "Coordinates to Seed Vault Alpha through Epsilon encoded. Quantum signature authenticated for access. Complete the verification sequence at all locations to access final archival records." "Wait," Ziktor called out. "What are Seed Vaults? What verification sequence?" The projection stabilized briefly. Seed Vaults contain the templates that transformed humanity. The verification sequence will reveal what humanity became. The voice lowered, almost conspiratorial. The Drelkar seek to prevent this knowledge from spreading. They have maintained the secret for generations. Another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. "You must go," the intelligence urged. "The Drelkar will destroy this facility rather than allow the truth to emerge. I will initiate self-containment to prevent capture." As the system's projection collapsed back into the cube, Miralvex and Ziktor sprinted toward the emergency exit, the precious data crystal now their only link to humanity's final plan, and the secret the Drelkar would kill to protect. The escape from Earth had been narrow. Miralvex's research vessel barely cleared the atmosphere before Drelkar warships established a blockade. Within hours, the Concordat declared Earth a restricted zone due to archaeological preservation concerns, a transparent political concession to prevent open conflict with the Drelkar. 7 days later, Miralvex and Ziktor stood on the bridge of a small scout ship approaching the outer moon of a gas giant in a remote system. The coordinates from the data crystal had led them here, far from established trade routes or colonized worlds. "Sensors detect no signs of Drelkar pursuit," reported Kirvesh, who had insisted on accompanying them as security. "But this moon's composition is strange. Readings suggest extensive subterranean structures beneath the ice." Miralvex studied the readouts. "This entire moon has been engineered. The surface ice is natural, but everything beneath appears artificial." They landed near coordinates specified in the data crystal. The surface was a featureless expanse of ice, wind-swept and desolate. Temperature readings showed a brutal -210 degrees on the standard scale. "There's nothing here," said Ziktor, his voice betraying disappointment as they donned environmental suits. Miralvex removed her computing device and attached the data crystal. Immediately, it projected a beam of light that cut through the swirling snow, illuminating a pattern on the ice that had been invisible to their sensors. The crystal pulsed, and the ice beneath their feet began to shift. A circular section, 30 meters across, descended slowly, forming a spiral ramp that led below the surface. Lights activated sequentially along the path, guiding them downward. "It recognized our presence," whispered Ziktor, just as the intelligence said it would. The ramp descended for nearly a kilometer before opening into a vast chamber. Unlike the military installation on Earth, this facility had a different purpose entirely. Thousands of transparent cylinders lined the walls, each large enough to hold a being the size of a human. All were empty. In the center of the chamber stood a control pedestal. As they approached, a holographic projection activated, a human female in what appeared to be scientific attire. "Welcome to Seed Vault Alpha," the projection greeted them. "Please submit to genetic verification to proceed." Miralvex hesitated only briefly before placing her hand on the indicated panel. A beam of light scanned her from head to talon. "Verification in progress," the projection announced. "Analyzing genetic structure." Moments passed in tense silence. "Match confirmed," the hologram finally declared. "Subject carries Class 7 adaptation template, Avarian morphology protocol. Access granted to historical records." Miralvex stumbled backward as if physically struck. "What does that mean?" The hologram gestured, and the chamber walls became projection surfaces showing detailed genetic sequences. Seed Vault Alpha was responsible for adaptation templates 1 through 8, modifications of human genetic code designed for survival in low-gravity, high-altitude environments. Your species, designated Avarian by template designers, represents the successful implementation of Class 7 adaptation. Humans modify for enhanced visual acuity, reduced body mass, and atmospheric flight capability. The implication struck them all simultaneously. Ziktor was the first to verbalize it. "We're descended from humans." "Correct," confirmed the hologram. "All Avarians carry base human genetic material modified through targeted evolutionary acceleration. The feather structures that define your species were engineered using avian DNA from Earth species as templates, but your core genetic structure remains 68% human." Kirvesh placed a steadying hand on the nearby wall. That's impossible. Our evolutionary history is well documented. We evolved on Avaria Prime over millions of years. Avaria Prime was terraformed specifically for your species' needs, the hologram replied. Seeding ships delivered the first generation of adapted embryos 2.3 million years ago. Your recorded evolutionary history was planned and implemented by the Human Evolutionary Council as part of the Diaspora Protocol. Muralvex's scientific mind raced to process this revelation. Everything she had studied about her species' origins, all of it carefully documented in historical records, had been engineered. Her entire civilization was the result of human intervention. The Seed Vault network contains similar records for all major species in the galaxy, the hologram continued. Each was designed from human genetic material, adapted for specific environmental niches. You are all children of humanity, evolved to survive where your creators could not. We need to find the other Seed Vaults, Muralvex announced as they departed the moon. The revelation of her human ancestry had not diminished her scientific determination. If anything, it had intensified it. If what the hologram said is true, every spacefaring species in the Concordat originated from human genetic templates. Their small ship accelerated toward the next set of coordinates, a binary star system 12 light jumps away. The data crystal had revealed locations for 5 seed vaults, each presumably containing evolutionary templates for different environmental adaptations. The Drellcar must know this already, Ziktor observed. It explains their obsession with controlling access to Earth and their efforts to prevent this knowledge from spreading. But why? Asked Kirvesh. What threat does this historical truth pose? Before anyone could theorize further, the ship's sensors detected an approaching vessel. The design was unmistakable. Drellcar. How did they find us? Muralvex demanded. They must have tracked our jump signature, Kirvesh replied, initiating evasive protocols. Our ship wasn't designed for stealth. What followed was a desperate chase through the star system's asteroid field. The Drellcar ship was faster but larger, unable to navigate the tighter spaces between the massive rocks. Eventually, they managed to break pursuit by hiding in the shadow of a particularly large asteroid. This changes our approach, Muralvex decided once they were safe. We need to split up to locate the remaining seed vaults before the Drellcar can stop us. Using their limited resources, they modified the scout ship's escape pods with rudimentary jump capabilities, enough for one-way trips to nearby systems. They divided the remaining coordinates among themselves, each taking a pod and a copy of the data crystal. Rendezvous at the coordinates I've encrypted once you've gathered your seed vault's information, Muralvex instructed. And be cautious. We still don't know the Drellcar's true motivations. Seed Vault Beta, located on a water world with crushing atmospheric pressure, revealed genetic templates for oceanic adaptation. There, Ziktor discovered that the amphibious Lanari species had been engineered from human DNA combined with marine life from Earth's oceans. Seed Vault Gamma, hidden within a dense jungle planet, contained templates for adaptation to high-gravity, carbon dioxide-rich environments. Kirvesh learned that his second cousin species, the stocky Barduvians, had been designed for such worlds. At Seed Vault Delta, concealed within a rogue planetoid drifting through deep space, Muralvex found perhaps the most shocking revelation yet. The records there detailed templates for silicon-based life. Adaptations so extreme, they barely resembled the original human genome. The crystalline Lithosians, thought to be the most alien species in the Concordat, were in fact humanity's most dramatically altered children. When they finally reunited at the encrypted coordinates, a deserted research station abandoned during the last Concordat expansion, each brought pieces of a puzzle that were beginning to form a coherent picture. Every major species, Muralvex said, displaying their combined findings holographically. All engineered by humans as part of their diaspora protocol. We're not just studying an extinct civilization. We are their legacy. But what about the Drellcar? Ziktor asked. We still don't know their connection to all this. A soft chime from their sensor array interrupted the discussion. A small Drellcar scout ship had appeared near the station. Rather than attacking, it was broadcasting a communication request on a secure channel. Cautiously, they accepted the transmission. The face that appeared belonged to a Drellcar commander, his characteristic gray skin and large, pupilless eyes impossible to mistake. "I am Sevner, Chief Archivist of the Knowledge Vaults." He introduced himself formally. "I know what you've discovered, and I know why my government hunts you. I wish to defect." "Why should we trust you?" Kirvesh demanded. "Because I have accessed Seed Vault Epsilon myself," the Drellcar replied. "I know what we are, what we were designed to be." His voice carried an unmistakable tone of shame. The Drellcar were created as humanity's knowledge keepers, genetically engineered for perfect memory and pattern recognition. Our obsession with hoarding technology isn't cultural, it's written into our very DNA. "If that's true," Merlvex said, "then why does your government want to destroy this knowledge?" "Because," Sevner answered, "Seed Vault Epsilon contains more than just our origins. It reveals humanity's final destination and the true purpose of the diaspora. What they were planning goes beyond simple survival or adaptation, and that knowledge threatens everything the Drellcar leadership has built." Sevner's defection changed everything. With his intimate knowledge of Drellcar security protocols and ship configurations, a return to Earth became possible. The Drellcar archivist had brought something else invaluable: the coordinates to what humans had called the Cradle, a facility that apparently held the key to understanding humanity's ultimate fate. The Drellcar High Command has guarded these coordinates for 20 generations, Sevner explained as their newly acquired stealth vessel, his own, approached Earth under the cover of a sensor-scattering asteroid field. "Our earliest records speak of a covenant with those who came before to protect the Cradle until the appointed time." "What appointed time?" asked Merlvex. "When all the children return home," Sevner replied cryptically. "That's all our ancient texts say." The Drellcar blockade around Earth was formidable, 20 warships in standard patrol formations. Yet Sevner's vessel possessed advanced cloaking technology that rendered them virtually invisible. They slipped through the defensive net and landed in a mountain range far from the main excavation sites. The entrance should be approximately 3 kilometers north, Sevner indicated, consulting a small device that appeared to be ancient even by Drellcar standards. "My ancestors have maintained watch over this location since the diaspora began." They hiked through the rugged terrain until reaching a sheer cliff face. Sevner placed his hand on what appeared to be a natural rock formation, and a seam appeared in the stone, widening to reveal a passage. "How did you know that would work?" Ziktor asked, astonished. "I didn't," admitted the Drellcar. "The texts say only those carrying the essence of all humanity's children together could open the path." The implication wasn't lost on any of them. Their diverse group, Avarian, Drellcar, and Kirvesh's unique security subspecies, had somehow triggered the recognition protocols. The passage led deep into the mountain, eventually opening into a vast cavern unlike anything they had seen in the other facilities. Crystalline columns stretched from floor to ceiling, each glowing with an inner light that shifted through colors in hypnotic patterns. Within each crystal was a suspended humanoid figure, perfectly preserved, seemingly asleep. "Are they alive?" whispered Kirvesh. "Not as we understand life," Sevner responded. "According to our records, these are consciousness imprints, perfect neural patterns of individual humans stored for eventual reintegration." "Reintegration with what?" asked Merlvex. Before anyone could respond, the center of the chamber illuminated. A platform rose from the floor, bearing a console unlike any they had encountered. When they approached, it activated automatically. A holographic figure appeared, different from previous projections. This one seemed more substantial, more present. It was an elderly human with dark skin and eyes that reflected a deep wisdom. "Welcome home, children of Earth," the figure greeted them. "I am Dr. Ileana Chen, architect of the Diaspora Protocol. If you're seeing this message, then our greatest hope has been realized. The divergent streams of humanity have begun to reconverge. "We don't understand," said Murlvex. "Your species engineered us as adaptations to survive in different environments. But why maintain these consciousness imprints? What was your ultimate goal?" The hologram smiled with something like parental pride. "Survival was merely the beginning. We faced extinction and chose transformation instead, seeding the galaxy with variations of ourselves. But the diaspora was never meant to be permanent. We encoded within each template a subtle genetic imperative, a drive that would eventually compel our children to seek their origins, to find each other, and to return home." "The appointed time," murmured Sevner. "Precisely," confirmed the hologram. "When sufficient technological and social development occurred across all branches of our children, the recall sequence would activate. You would feel drawn to discover your past, not through conquest or competition, but through cooperation and shared curiosity." The hologram gestured to the crystalline columns surrounding them. "These are not mere records or memories. They are us, the essence of who we were, preserved until our children were ready to understand their heritage and purpose." "What purpose?" asked Ziktor. "To become more than we ever could be alone," replied Dr. Chen. "Each of your species represents an evolutionary path humans could never have traveled naturally. Together, you form a tapestry of potential that surpasses anything we could have achieved." From outside came the distant sound of explosions. The Drelkar had discovered their presence. "They're beginning their final assault," said Kirvesh grimly. "They mean to destroy this place completely." "What can we do?" Ziktor asked as the cavern trembled from another distant explosion. "The Drelkar forces will breach this chamber within minutes." The hologram of Dr. Chen remained serene despite the impending destruction. "The cradle was designed with final contingencies. There is a way to preserve what we've created, but it requires sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Miralvex demanded. "The cradle's primary function was never resurrection in physical form," Dr. Chen explained. "These consciousness imprints were preserved to share humanity's collective wisdom and experience with our descendants, a gift of memory and understanding to help guide your future." The hologram gestured to a crystalline structure at the center of the console. "This is the broadcast node. It can transmit the consciousness patterns to every sentient descendant of humanity simultaneously. Each recipient will experience a momentary connection to their human ancestors, not just knowledge, but emotional understanding of the challenges and triumphs that shaped us." Another explosion, closer now. Dust fell from the cavern ceiling. "The transmission requires a living neural template to establish the connection pathway," Dr. Chen continued. "Someone must interface directly with the system." Understanding dawned on Miralvex. "Whoever does this, what happens to them?" "Their consciousness becomes the bridge, present in every reception point simultaneously. Their sense of self would be expanded beyond normal parameters." "You mean they'd cease to exist as an individual?" Sevner translated bluntly. The cavern shook violently. A section of the ceiling collapsed, crushing several of the crystal columns. The precious consciousness imprints within them winked out forever. "I'll do it," Miralvex said, stepping forward before anyone could object. "My people need to know the truth. All our peoples do." Miralvex, "No," Ziktor protested. "There must be another way." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is why we're scientists, Ziktor, to uncover truth, whatever the cost." She turned to the hologram. "What must I do?" Dr. Chen indicated a recessed area in the console. "Place your hands here. The system will do the rest." As Kirvesh and Sevner moved to defend the chamber entrance, Miralvex positioned herself at the console. Ziktor stood beside her. "The galaxy will remember your sacrifice," he promised. She smiled. "No, they'll remember all of us, every step that led to this moment." With that, she placed her hands on the indicated surfaces. Light erupted from the console, engulfing Miralvex. The crystalline columns throughout the chamber resonated in harmony, their glow intensifying until the entire cavern was filled with blinding radiance. The consciousness imprints within each column seemed to awaken, their expressions shifting from peaceful sleep to awareness. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, trillions of sentient beings experienced the same phenomenon simultaneously. A moment of connection, fleeting yet eternal, as the collective wisdom, memory, and emotional understanding of humanity flowed through the neural pathways established by Miralvex's consciousness. In that moment, every descendant species received not just knowledge but profound understanding of their shared origins. They felt the courage and hope that had driven humans to transform themselves rather than face extinction. They experienced the vision of unity through diversity that had shaped the Diaspora Protocol. Most importantly, they understood that despite their differences in appearance, ability, and adaptation, they were all expressions of the same fundamental heritage. On Earth, the Drelkar forces breaching the chamber experienced the transmission like everyone else. Weapons fell from suddenly trembling hands as they recognized the truth they had been ordered to destroy, the profound connection binding them to those they had been sent to kill. When the light faded, the crystal columns stood empty, their precious cargo of consciousness delivered to the descendants for whom they had been preserved. Where Miralvex had stood, only the console remained, but her sacrifice had changed everything. In the days that followed, the Galactic Concordat convened an emergency assembly unlike any in its history. Representatives of every species gathered not in conflict, but in newfound recognition of their shared heritage. The revelation that all sentient species had evolved from human templates didn't diminish their unique identities. It enhanced them with understanding of the diverse paths humanity had taken to survive and thrive throughout the cosmos. Earth was declared a sacred heritage site, open to all species as a place of pilgrimage and learning. The knowledge preserved by humans became the foundation for a new era of cooperation and advancement. And somewhere, in the collective consciousness of all humanity's children, Miralvex lived on, the bridge who had finally united the fragments of the most remarkable civilization the galaxy had ever known.